Welcome back to another episode of Bits and Boards. I'm Anthony Krolikowski, as always, and today we have a guest that if you grew up in about, I want to say, the 90s, which was a little before I grew up, but around that time, and I certainly watched these episodes as a kid, you're going to be very familiar with this guest once you hear him talk and explain his story. And we have joining us today is Matthew Sussman, right here in the News 10 CTV studio. So first, thank you, sir, for hopping over here to Albany today.
My great pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So for people who don't quite know your roles, why don't you just tell us a little bit about what you did back in the day?
Well, I think from the perspective of what's going on in the world of Comic-Cons and all that stuff today, I'm primarily known as the original voice of Meowth in the Pokémon television series, as well as the voice of Slowking in the Pokémon 2000 movies and a movie, and a number of other roles and stuff along the way in that universe.
Yeah. So starting out with that whole world, which obviously for a lot of kids from the 90s and even myself being a 2000s kid, going before school and turning on TV, and Meowth is a very iconic character from the series. So just first, tell me about how did you get into that world, the whole voice acting world, and what led to landing that role and how that came across your desk?
The fact of the matter is that even though I always liked maybe the notion of doing voice work, and I did do some commercial voiceover work, I had never done anything in animation before, and then honestly, I fell into it like so many things as actors do. I didn't go into pursuing it as a voice actor, and sometimes when people ask me, can you give me some tips on that? My way in, my journey there was kind of random in a sense. It was just that luck of the draw, right? What do they say? The right place at the right time.
Of course, yeah.
So I was doing a play in New York, really actually quite an interesting play off Broadway, that was with the great Philip Seymour Hoffman, the late Philip Seymour Hoffman, who was in the play. The stage manager asked if anybody was interested in auditioning for a new animated series to do voices because her boyfriend at the time was involved in the production, and that turned out to be one of the writers and actors, Michael Hagney, and it turned out to be Pokémon. And I went in and I read for a whole variety of parts, so probably every male human role, and then Meowth, they brought the pictures of Meowth to me and description of what he did, and I came up with a crazy idea for a voice, and I landed it and got the part, and that's how I got into it, because I started big. I mean, it was like one of those things like if you walk in and you get something that turns out to be a huge hit and a good part in a huge hit, your career starts there. And so it was really kind of backing into it in a way.
Yeah. From my understanding, now it's been a little while since I looked back at the timeline for Pokemon, but of course the video games came out first and then came along the anime. So when you were introduced to Pokemon, did you know or realize how big it was at the time, or was it still at a point where it wasn't as big as it before the big boom, or where was that at?
In the States, the show came first.
Okay.
It might have been true that elsewhere
in Japan, probably. Okay.
But all we were introduced to, we brought Pokemon to the attention of the English-speaking world, and it was, and the games, I guess, was very close on the heels of that. So no, the only thing that I knew, and this is probably true of most of the people involved, the only thing that the American actors had heard about this show was news from Japan that the strobe effects in a couple of the episodes, or at least one episode, had caused some seizures in some Japanese children.
The Porygon one, correct?
What's that?
The Porygon episode?
I honestly don't remember which one it was, but that apparently was the story. And that was sort of, oh my gosh, that's this show? We were like, oh, wow, okay. So then, but then, obviously when the show did, air, it was immediately a hit. I mean, it was like everywhere immediately. That first season was Pokemon mania. And so we knew we had something big at that point. The thing that I often get asked is, but could you have had any idea that so many years later it would still be such a popular thing? And the answer obviously is no, because there's no way anybody could have ever imagined what has happened to this along the way.
Yeah, for something to live for, 30 years it's been now since the Pokemon series celebrated?
Friday was the 30th anniversary, yeah.
And with it, the Game Boy Advance games, Fire Red and Leaf Green, came back out for the Switch, which Meowth is in. And I've actually been playing it a little bit, and Meowth is kind of funny because you can use them to grind up some money in the game and some random items. So I was having some fun with that, even though he's not the strongest because he's, he evolves, but he's still a fun time. Going back into the anime a little bit, though, tell me about coming up with that voice and why you decided to go through with that voice. Obviously, you had some direction with the script and maybe what the director was looking for, but really quick spitballing here. When I think of Meowth's voice, I'm thinking like the male version of the nanny, if you can think of that.
That's a good one. I like that, yeah. Well, actually, the truth is that there really wasn't input from the director at the audition. The folks who were casting, we had some illustrations, some just static illustrations of the character and written description of what his deal was. That he was this cat and the only Pokemon who spoke. And we were like learning at the auditions. We were sort of like getting a lot of information about this world that had already been created in Japan. And we were like, okay, he's a cat and he's part of this Team Rocket who are like kind of the bad guys, but kind of harmless bad guys, but they're kind of the antagonists. And he thinks he's kind of tough, but he's actually always getting kicked around and falling off of, cliffs and all this sort of jazz and very high energy and stuff. And honestly, I was just trying to think of, as an actor, I was just trying to think of what could I do that might be, really fun with it. And I just I went out, I was thinking it over. I was trying out things in the hallway pretty much. And I was like, oh, well, if he thinks he's a tough guy, maybe he would sound like an old-time gangster. So that's where the big, heavy New York accent comes from. And my inspiration from that was old 1930s black and white gangster movies. I didn't grow up, obviously, during that period, but I grew up watching those movies on television because they used to show all those old movies on New York TV. And so I grew up watching those classic Hollywood gangsters. That was something I could kind of do. Edward G. Robinson was kind of really the voice. He was like a tough guy, see, And then I thought, well, if he's really such a little dweeb, basically, and he's kind of like a guy who gets kind of like, he's just like a little guy, I thought of Jerry Lewis, and that was another, kind of Hollywood icon who I grew up on watching, and he had this crazy, whiny little kid, who never grew up voice. And I just sort of blended the two, and I was playing around with it and went in to do the test, and I was like, I don't know if you guys are going to like this or think it's totally wrong, but I'm going to try something and see if you like it, see what you think, and this is what I have in mind. And then I just jumped in and did it with the lines, and they said, that's great, we love it. And that's how that voice came to be.
For people like me who don't really know how the voice acting world or the casting world certainly works, then going forward with that role, and obviously you have these other voice actors that are Jesse and James and Ash and the whole crew, but what is it like telling the story through the voice? You're just in the booth and looking at the other lines and reading your own. Is there any sort of group togetherness to kind of play off each other? How does that work?
Well, in those days anyway, and I know it may have changed, and I haven't been doing it for a while, so I'm not sure if those things have evolved. But yes, it's a very lonely kind of work in a way. It's you and the director because that's the only person you're communicating with. You're doing your lines in isolation. You're alone in the booth. You do read it over. I mean, sure. I mean, you have a sense of what the scene is and what else is going on, but it's very technical. You get beeped into the time for you to, at least now, again, this is in the late 90s, yes. So technology, I'm sure, has advanced in some ways, but I'm told that it's not that dissimilar. It's just they can do more things to play with it. But the fact is, it was just like they would beep you in, like 3, 2, 1, go is basically what it was, and you had to sync to the lip flap of the original animation. You were dubbing to an existing animated picture. So it's not like when people do things like, and I'm imagining things like The Simpsons or Pixar movies and things like that, the actors might come first, and from their voice, and their delivery, they develop the animation. This is literally trying to match what's already in, the mouths are going, and you can't be too long or too short. And that's why when people would say to me later, was it hard to do the voice? Because it is a kind of bit of an extreme voice, kind of very high pitched. The only problem was we had to do so many takes over and over and over to get it just right. So if you were like doing one of these, being chased and screaming and yelling and all this stuff, and having to do that many times over until everything matched up just right, by then you needed a nice pot of tea and honey and stuff to calm your voice back down. But otherwise, it was really fun, but it was really the rapport wasn't with the other actors. That was all done in editing. It's amazing how when you watch it, you just people assume that we were like timing it, and I'm like throwing off little wisecracks and all this kind of stuff, and they're doing put downs and all these things. It was all done in the edit. They might give you an adjustment to say, do that a certain way. Obviously they give you direction, but the final result is the result of this like brilliant work done in the background of the editors. Yeah.
It's certainly interesting because obviously the source is from the Japanese animation. So you're taking that, making it so an American audience or any other audience can understand it. So you're more catching up and trying to piece it all together from what's already there. So you're filling in those gaps. And it's sort of, like you said, The Simpsons, they're probably making it it's already made for a U.S. audience or an English-speaking audience. So playing catch up, but certainly it's an art that you can make it very interesting and funny and, have that memorable character shine through. Going forward with the series there, so you brand yourself as the original voice of Meowth. So for about how many seasons or regions for people who are more familiar with Pokemon was that exactly for? And maybe what was a region or a season that really stuck out to you that you enjoyed?
Oh, I honestly, I can't tell you. I mean, I just enjoyed all that I did. I had a kind of I'll just say unfortunately, slightly shortened lifetime with the show in that role because, as I was saying in my background, I was a theater and film actor and TV live action actor. This came along and it was interesting and I had a lot of fun and then it came out and it was a hit. But just around that time, I got offered a really great role lead role in a play, which was what I trained for, what I had worked toward and all that stuff. And for years, and then this voice thing was kind of this sideline. We were not getting paid a lot of money for it at all. And even though it seemed like it was really a good thing to be part of, again, no one could have imagined that it would run for years and years and years and become, this amazing nostalgia thing. So when I got this part in this play, I took that job. And unfortunately in those days, we didn't have the internet. So you couldn't go off. I had to go do this play first in Chicago for 3 months. And I couldn't be in New York. And you had to be in New York to record for Pokemon. You couldn't be somewhere else. So what they did was, and that was the understanding we had, truth be told, was that they were going to hire somebody else. They were going to audition other actors to see who could do something, pretty seamless to what I had done with the voice and have someone fill in for those 3 months until I came back and I could pick it up. So I went off and did that thing and, and I was gone. And then, I was in touch with them the whole time and everything and, making plans to come back. But when I returned to New York, the other fellow had done, X number of episodes. I'm not sure how many he would have knocked out in those 3 months. The producers, the powers that be, show business being what it is,
of course,
they decided, okay, you know what? We love you. We want you to do other things, but we don't want to switch back again. We think you were great. You're always going to be the original. But the fact is, we don't want to confuse the kids. They're getting used to something that's slightly different. And now we don't want to go back and forth and mix it up. So that's showbiz, as the saying goes. And so I no longer did Meowth on television. So it was kind of I think the number is in the 30 episodes thereabouts.
Okay.
I know Indigo League was, I think, the first. So, but I'm not a Pokemon aficionado.
That's okay. That's totally fine.
No, I know. I mean, what I mean is that people ask me all the time because they know all the shows, they know the different series, all the different chapters and stuff, and I know relatively little. I try to learn as I go along at the conventions, but I know I did something somewhere between 30 and 40. It was something in that episodes. So my voice definitely set the tone, and the character was always, somewhat in that range. But that was my time doing that. And fortunately, at this point, I can in good conscience say that I'm the original, I'm the OG guy, but other people did it for longer than I did. A couple of different actors who over the many years did it subsequently.
Among other things that you've done and also your other career adventures and, making it work as an actor, I'm sure, the play, and like you said, that was where you started anyways, and that was probably your dreams in life. So things change all the time. I know my career path has changed a little bit over time, and we just have fun with it. So we're going to take a little break. We're going to come back. Obviously, we have a lot more to find out about what you've done and all the fun that you've had with it. So stay with us, and we're going to play that little jingle for you. Welcome back. So, Mr. Sussman, now you mentioned earlier that you're not exactly the aficionado of Pokemon, but as the original Meowth, you certainly do have a legacy there. So just tell me about where your passion, your history lies with, the franchise as a whole, the games, the everything.
Yeah, well, the thing of it was, again, because the group of us who started it, we kind of didn't know where we were all just like kind of going forward, but we didn't really know what it would all entail. And I was, quite a fully grown person by then. And so I wasn't watching the show except to see how it was coming out. I mean, I was naturally curious what I sounded like, what the show looked like and all that. So I randomly obviously watched a whole bunch of it. Actors are always interested in what they do, and if they can stand it, they like to watch them. So I did that, but then particularly because I moved away from the show, at least in that role, and then over the years, it was a few years later that I decided I didn't want to be a full-time actor anymore because I'd already done it for like 20 years, and I ended up doing other things. And I had a family, and I have a daughter, and she was also not an anime person. She wasn't someone who grew up loving anime, even though I had been in it and stuff. It didn't catch on for her. Her passion was Harry Potter. The books, I read them to her at bedtime for for a couple of years. Then then she read them, and she was way into the movies and all that stuff. So that was her passion. So she sort of skipped over the whole thing. Now Pokemon has become so much bigger again since around in the early 2020s. Around COVID and just, I guess, before
the card
that,
market is humongous
and then
right
it
now.
all exploded.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So she's already, a full-grown adult now. So she's not going backwards. She's fat. She gets a kick out of the fact that I'm flying around the world, doing these conventions and stuff, and meeting all these people, and kind of having this great adventure with it. But neither of us. So it wasn't a household where I tracked it, and so I'm always listening to fans informing me at conventions or on panels and stuff like that about different parts of the show, different things that go on. But I've had to kind of absorb it without my own reference to it. So that's why I say, it's very meaningful to me, and I love the fact that I get to meet all the enthusiasts, the fans, the people who it meant a lot to, who it still means something to. A lot of them are bringing up their kids watching it now, even the old shows, and it's great. It's a thrill, and I'm so privileged. But it just wasn't something that I ever developed a passion for, and I know what it is to be obsessive and a collector, and a lot of those other things. Like I have my areas in which that's true, all of which are family friendly, but
disclaimer.
But I know what it is to be obsessed and have my heroes and my idols and all that stuff. I just can't get my head around that for some other people, I'm part of something that is that important. Because in my daily life, it's just part
of it, yeah.
It's like you just don't.
One of many
compute.
things you've done.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly. But so that's why I say I'm not knowledgeable. People ask me so many deep questions, deep cuts about episodes, characters, all these different aspects. And I just like smile and tell them, I just try to be honest about it. But it is a funny thing because I am definitely one of the lesser educated people at the conventions.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference between a creator and a consumer.
Yeah.
And obviously, like I mentioned before, obviously I make news every day. Not every night do I want to go home and consume a whole lot of news. We all need a break.
Sure.
So there's only so much that we can handle of some things. But you mentioned conventions. So tell me about what these conventions have been like for you, how many of them you go to, why you go to them, what do conventions mean to you?
Well, they've come to mean a huge amount on a couple of fronts. So just 2 years ago, literally in January of 24, I had been contacted, a good friend of mine who had been doing them. I messaged him. I saw that he was doing these shows, and I was like, "Wow, how did that come about? What was how did that all become a part of your life?" And he said, "Well, listen, are you interested? Because played an iconic role in the series. I can't imagine that there would not be interest in you doing them. If you'd like me to put you in touch with some people," and he did, and people came knocking, and through this and that, the way these things work, I ended up doing my first conventions actually in London and Dublin on consecutive weeks in January of 24. And so this is now just 2 years later, and I think I've probably done somewhere around 25, 30
It's a lot.
conventions in all over the U.S. I've been to Europe a number of times, the UK, different parts of the UK, different countries there, and more of the same coming. And tell you the truth, speaking right on current events, I was scheduled, or I am scheduled technically by contract, to go to a big convention in Kuwait at the end of March.
Wow.
Unfortunately, there's a war on.
Yeah.
So I can't say that's going to happen because I haven't had an official word. Mm-hmm. But that's how far afield we're going. We're going all over the place. And to answer your question, what it's come to mean to me is, first of all, it is somewhat of source of income. It's a source of meeting, having a fantastic time, seeing places I've never seen, meeting people in so many different cultures, both in the U.S. and elsewhere, who are so into this thing. And it's sort of this community of people who love this thing, who love Pokémon and who love anime. If it's not just our show, it's also other shows that people are representing, other series and other movies and things like that at these shows. And the simple fact of the matter is, it's like a gift. I didn't see it coming. We came out of COVID. A lot of the stuff that I do as a freelance photographer and stuff was really on the back burner during that couple of years. So things were kind of tough. And this thing came my way just as things were kind of opening back up and people were out there again. And it has just been a blessing. I can't tell you how much I enjoy it.
We've had the pictures playing of the stuff we view at conventions with some fans, and there's that one card, the Slow King card in there. So what are some of the other voices that you've done and the roles?
Excuse me. So when they did the first film in, I guess, 98 or 99, I don't think I was around. I think I was out of town when they were doing it. And then, but when the film Pokemon 2000 came around, they said, well, we have this role. Would you be willing to come in and do this part of Slowking? And so different than Meowth. I mean, like a whole different kind of character. And I said, of course, yeah, I'll do anything you guys want to do. And I did that. And that just has turned out to be a character that people have great affection for. Then I did a lot of what I would say is like one-off or guest kind of characters on different episodes for a number of years. And then I did other series in anime. I did a show called Slayers. I did a show called Irresponsible Captain Tyler. I did, a variety of different things. Nothing had achieved the heights of success that Pokemon did, but that's one in a million. So
yeah, that's a high bar.
That's a pretty high bar. You can't. But I did a variety of different kind of characters and things that were great fun. Great thing about voice work is when you're on camera or on stage, you're going to be partly cast for your physical, what you look like. If they're looking for, a big tough guy, they're going to cast a big guy who at least has that look. If you can do it in your voice, so I got to, then it's a different thing. And that's, it opens up a lot of different opportunities. So I got to do all kinds of characters in anime shows that were not things I would have ever gotten cast in, say on television or film as myself, because I did a lot of doctors and lawyers and things like that.
For anyone who is considering, the acting world, I know it's a lot different now. We have AI voices and all that craziness, but just in general, the acting world, what is any advice that you have for them?
Some of it's a bit cliche, and I have to say, but I think there's some a lot of truth to these things. I think if the two big things is you have to really know that this is something that you want that badly, because it's a really tough life. It's a tough way to make a living. The work is very uncertain. You have to really be stand up for yourself, but you have to also be really flexible and take chances on things that don't always seem to be the best fit, but you got to go for it because you never know where an opportunity lies. You got to train, even if you don't train formally. Although I'm a big believer in that. I went to drama school and got an MFA in a really great drama school, and that was invaluable to my skill set. And experience and getting comfortable doing all kinds of things. So I believe in it. But I don't think that's the only route. Obviously, there are people who never take a class and are great actors. So you can't, that's not necessarily a requirement. But you've got to develop your skills and you've got to be intentional about it. And then you have to really just say, this is what I'm going to do for the next, say, year, 2 years, 5 years. Going to give it my all. Do anything that I can to get in front of people, try a lot of different things, see where my opportunity is best served. And then you've got to check in and say, this is working or not. I know people who spent many, many years, too many years, pursuing something that they had in their heads that was never going to be realistic. There's a lot of luck involved, and you've got to catch some of the luck before you're too old to enjoy it. So you've got to also check in and see how are you progressing. And even if you haven't become a star, which is, what some people dream of, you've got to know that you're actually, advancing in the profession, or maybe you should change direction and do something else. So it's sort of being smart and strategic and very dedicated. If you don't do the work, it ain't going to happen.
My last question for you, with the remaining time that we have, I'm going to pull up this video that we've had sitting here for quite some time. But photography, among other things maybe that you do, just tell me about these other adventures that you've done, what makes them rewarding to you. Photography is obviously here front and center.
What happened was I was for a long time I was working in marketing as a creative director, but I was always taking photographs. My mother is a photographer. My mother, still with us, is a photographer. Wonderful. She doesn't do it anymore. She's retired now. but she was a wonderful photographer. And so I grew up around an artist, and I used to spend a lot of time with her, going out and taking photographs and working in dark rooms and making photographs. And I fell in love with it really young. And there was a point in which I didn't know whether I wanted to be an actor or a photographer, and the stage bug just got me, I guess, stronger. But I realized when I decided not to do that anymore, and I wanted to still be a creative person, this other thing that I did really love to do, and I think did pretty well enough to really, make a go of it, was sitting there, and it was my way into a lot of other stuff. I produced documentaries, I directed documentary television and film. I work as a freelance photographer for a wide variety of clients, both corporate organizations, individuals, weddings, you name it. I love telling those visual stories. And now it just sits better with who I am at this point in my life than I think still being out there trying to be an actor would be.
Yeah. As I told you a little bit before, and for people who've watched News 10, I started as a photographer here, and that's what I went for college to do. I didn't go to college to be a reporter, and things changed, and I found a drive for this, and here we are. And things change, and like I said, and sometimes it's for the best, and we enjoy what we do in our crafts. And photography is a type of art. I consider making videos art. So as long as we can still be creative and enjoy what we do, can't complain too much.
If you get to do something creative and and sustain yourself somehow or other, have the life you want to lead, even if it's not exactly what you dreamed of in your greatest grandiose dreams, you are a very lucky person. And I consider myself a very lucky person because I have lived the creative life my whole adult life, and it's a blessing.
All right. Well, anything else you want to add, or not to put you on the spot, but if you want to do a voice to sign us out, it's up to you. Whatever you want to leave us with.
I'll give you one shot at Meowth. I usually only do it for kids, but I'm sure there are kids out there if anybody wants anyway. Meowth, that's right.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you making the drive out, and we will catch you all next time on Bits and Boards. So stay tuned, and we're going to play that jingle for you.